Hello, this is the Mae B Mindful Podcast, and I am your host, Hannah Mae. I'm a mother of 6, conscious birth instructor and educator, spiritual growth facilitator, and certified hypnotist. This podcast is about inspiring hope, expanding awareness and consciousness in order to revolutionize the way we live and experience our lives. You can expect thought-provoking episodes each week spanning a range of topics, drawing from both my own journey of transformation and healing and working with others. I hope you find this podcast to be informative, refreshing, illuminating, and instrumental in your own soul's evolution and growth. Let's jump right in. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. So happy you're joining me. Hannah Mae here, if you don't know by now. I was thinking about Bambi on this painting behind me, if you can't see it. She's there, she's standing on a pack of Marlboros, she's got a little twinkle in her eye, like, look at me, like, you ain't got nothing on me, Marlboro man. I came, I saw, I conquered, okay? It says Veni Vidi Vici, and she really spoke to me when I saw this painting, because she's very much like in her joyful, bright, beautiful, pure Bambi essence in this picture. And she's not dominated by anything. She's been victorious. She's conquered. And I was thinking about the solution that we need, the kind of solution that we need to access to overcome the kinds of problems that we can have that we perceive as being unsolvable sometimes. The things that lead us to feel so discouraged or so crushed or so overcome by or alone in. And everybody has their something. I don't care who you are, what kind of life you live, what your social status is. And if anybody thinks that they don't, well, then they're disillusioned, because as long as they're human, they do, and they have to contend with themselves. And the reason for that is, I believe, is that the solution is spiritual. Okay. It's ultimately, at the end of the day, spiritual. There's like so much great information out there. There's so much amazing neuroscience and information that's new stuff that they're finding out all the time. It's fascinating, but it's actually still, hate to say it, kind of superficial, because it doesn't solve the problem. It speaks to the problem, but it doesn't provide the solution. It can be helpful in knowing which route to navigate in order to find a solution, but it doesn't also fully explain the problem. If we want to access a solution, if our problems have piled up on us, we need to access a solution, and we feel crushed underneath the rubble, well, maybe that's not a bad place to be, actually, because as defeating as this can feel and as overwhelming as this can feel, when we finally get to a place where we stop trying to go outside of ourselves and reach for some other external solution that's probably superficial, isn't actually going to fix the problem, except for maybe yielding some temporary results, then we're left to go, okay, well, what now? And to be at the bottom of the barrel, to be feeling like you're crushed underneath a ton of rocks, is actually, I would say, is potentially a very sacred ground for humble surrender and acceptance of help and open-mindedness and willingness to see things a new way. And the reason why we need to see things a new way is because that's our whole fucking problem. It's the way we're seeing things. It's the lies and the beliefs that we came into agreement with along the way that distorted our perception and our reality, and like painted everything a different color and created a storm inside of our minds to where we couldn't see clearly anymore, to where we were only able to see through a foggy haze and the rain and the dust and the whatever was getting kicked up, not having clear visibility, not having the sunlight shine in and be able to warm us, right? And so interestingly, Bambi's true essence here, right? Like this bright, joyful spirit that she is, like buoyant, bright, light, happy, bouncy spirit, is the truth of who she is. It's who she came in as. And then when these problems happen and these ideas pile in, they pile in and they cover up this bright light. So this is why I was saying, like, to be caught underneath this pile of rubble is actually right where we need to be, because right at the bottom of this pile is where we can access ourselves. It's where we can really meet ourselves in our pain and be closer to the solution than if we were outside of it. And so before we came into agreement with, I'm going to call them lies from the pit of hell, even though they served us and they served to protect us possibly at that time. I call them lies from the pit of hell because usually they're fear-based, and I just haven't experienced fear to be at all helpful. I mean, people's favorite argument to hold on to fear is, I think it's a healthy fear. I'm like, no, it's not a fucking healthy fear. Fear is not healthy, okay? We're not talking about instinctual fears. We're not talking about the kind of fear that makes you, like the kind of fear of like falling to your death off a cliff that keeps you from standing on the edge on a windy day. That's not the kind of fear we're talking about. Talking about the kind of fears that block you from your true nature and block you from freely expressing your true essence in life as your purpose dictates, as your heart and your spirit dictate, that increases connection, that serves in the world, that brings joy to you and to others, and meaning to your life. And so, before we came into any of those beliefs and ideas, we were much more connected with ourselves, and those things came and severed that connection. And in order to go back into ourselves, we have to sort of go through the rubble. So this solution has to be bigger and brighter than those problems. It has to be so bright that it cuts through the darkness of the facade of that fear and that lie that has created a darkness that has blocked us off from the light of the truth. Because there is no human problem too big that a spiritual solution that God can't solve. It's just not my experience. You don't have to believe that, but I know that's true. Doesn't mean we're not challenged. Doesn't mean we can overcome something and then still doubt again, because that's our faith getting challenged to be strengthened, really. But when we access this bright light within us that was always there, and we can allow that to shine brightly out of us, we can allow that to become sort of like the balloon that carries us up out of our problems. There's lots of ways to do this. You can spend many years chipping away, which I've done in therapy, chipping away, like focusing on one rock at a time. And maybe that's okay. And maybe, and there's no judgment on that process, because that was part of my process at one point. But I also learned that I can, with a skilled practitioner and hypnotist, go in, and I don't have to stop necessarily and live in a problem. I don't have to go inside it. I don't have to make myself at home in it. I don't have to like set up shop there and live in the pain of that. I've had the experience of, on the journey inward, coming into contact with like certain wounds or parts of myself that I believed at the time I needed to really just be present in and sit in order to really accept. And that was, for me at that time, part of my process of accepting in order to move through them. But I've also had the experience of having a perception shift around this stuff and having that heal it too. And so yes, we can go in, we can do like 20 years of talk therapy on something and still maybe never get to the problem. I will say that hypnosis is pretty effective for getting straight to the problem, like snip snap, if you're ready for that. There's definitely more gentle forms of hypnosis, like self-hypnosis, seventh path self-hypnosis that I teach, that allows you to do it at your own pace, at the pace that you are really willing to look at stuff as it comes up. So when you take this journey inward, first of all, if we're going to step back into our power, we have to step back into agency first in our thought life. And we have to exit the problem essentially the same way we entered the problem. Now, when we enter the problem, We were not aware that we were entering the problem. But in order to exit the problem, you have to become conscious and awake and aware to it. And so the problem and the beliefs that we came into put us into a sleep-like state, an unconscious state. And so when we go to let go of those things, we have to become awake and aware to them. And this can be uncomfortable because waking up can be a little bit uncomfortable. It can feel easier to stay asleep sometimes. And a lot of people aren't ready to wake up. That's why you see people staying in denial to certain behaviors or things, and you're like, you don't understand, but they're not ready to face certain truths for whatever reason. And, there's really no judgment that anybody can have on that, because we've all, whether we realize it or not, have experienced it. We are all unaware to some degree, and we can always become more aware and wake up to ourselves more, come to know ourselves more, come to know this power in us more in order to shine more light. And I've had experiences where when the light sometimes is shone on to something inside of you that you were not aware of, it can be a little jarring and a little shocking sometimes. I don't believe that we really see that stuff unless we're ready. The mind doesn't really allow us to see that stuff unless we're ready to see it. So the best thing I think to start with is like this honest seeking, like this honest desire, like, what is it that you want? Just start to follow the path with it. Like, what is it that you want freedom from? It's obviously much more helpful to do with somebody who understands how to navigate that, to guide you through it. As far as reaccessing yourself and taking that journey inward, it's a process. It's like a really beautiful process that we can't really put a time limit on, right? Because we don't really know what that journey is going to be. You really wouldn't want that journey to be done in a single day, although we are impatient. I definitely have wanted to speed things along in order to be where I think I need to be. But again, that's just my judgment on something, or impatience anyways. As far as what this looks like for everybody and what that journey looks like, it's going to be a little different. We're going to bump into different parts of ourselves as we go inward, and some things are going to feel at first possibly disturbing. But if we understand that the obstacles even then are only the thoughts and the fears and the beliefs around that, or the judgments on it that the mind is throwing up to possibly protect us, to deter us, avoid having to feel something, to protect us from what it thinks what the mind thinks it needs to protect us from. But if you knew that you were absolutely held, that you were absolutely covered, that you were already, that it was already at your core resolved, how would that change things for you? So I think we go out in our best efforts with our lack of tools, and with our lack of tools as our little selves, and we go to create and make more secure these security structures for ourselves. And then when we have to dismantle that in order to rebuild from the foundation up, reunited with our reclaimed true whole selves, it's interesting because it's like naturally we're going to have fear, and we're going to feel insecure, but that's only because we were living inside a false structure. And so if we knew we were secure, if we were secure before those things happened that caused us to feel insecure, then there'd be no problem. So it's not that we don't know, it's that we've forgotten. If you knew that you knew on a deep level, but you lost connection with that, how would that change things for you? And if you were able to bypass all of it, which I'm not for bypassing anything, I'm really about honestly facing and addressing. But if you knew that you could go straight to the core of that power, that divine power within, because we're all part of the same spiritual body. We're all made of the same spiritual substance. We're made of the stuff that God is, because he made us. So this is my belief. My words don't have to totally resonate or align for you, and maybe they don't, but I'm just speaking to you from my own spiritual, experiential understanding, the things that have really been pressed into my body on like a cellular spiritual level that nobody's told me. They're experiences that I've had that have come to be fact for me. So while I'm not God, right? Thank God, actually, that's a great relief, because it means like I don't have to have that much responsibility for everyone and everything. It also is a great relief to know that that means you're not God, because I don't really want anybody else making those kinds of decisions for me. It does mean that I am part of. It means that I am part of that spiritual, ever expansive, all encompassing substance that upholds, sustains, that is, right? That I am. And therefore, that is in me. I don't think I could be alive and operate without it. I could be cut off from it, and a very cut off person is slightly alarming to be around if you've ever experienced it. And there's degrees of that, of course. But if we can access that and already know that and hold close to that and dip into that, then that's the thing that will enable you to understand that you can transcend these things, because you've already transcended them. You've already overcome them. It's simply a matter of knowing and believing that in order to step into that. And as far as like diving into the problem, and as far as taking that journey inward and doing the work to really resolve and to face those things that maybe need to be addressed, I've done it multiple ways, and there's no judgment really on any way, because I believe everything in my experience has been there as a teaching tool, and I've gained a lot of insight from all of it, even in the things where I'm like, well, there's a what not to do. Like there's a, oh, I don't have to do that ever again. I made way more work of that than was necessary, because I used to really think that it was my job to solve the problem, that if I dove in and I chipped away at, like, I'd get kind of hung up on all these different like individual little boulders to chip away at, and in reality it was a distraction and I didn't need to. And I've had experiences where I've been directed in hypnosis and gone in and simply had a belief change that has allowed something to just pop and no longer be there. Now, that's not for everything. I only say that because sometimes people get very immersed in their own pain and they stay there longer than they need to, because that's their focal point. So that consumes them. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to press into things in order to confront them, to face them, to process them. But that processing and how we process them and what we hold on to and what we're accessing within ourselves simultaneously while processing them, like supporting ourselves as we process those things, is the thing that can make all the difference and make it much more of an expedient process. And actually a really beautiful, joyful experience of reconnecting and reuniting with yourself, and having and being able to learn and show yourself an incredible amount of self-acceptance and love and nurturing where it's really needed in order to heal. Yeah, my favorite's hypnosis. There's very gentle ways of doing this in hypnosis. And my favorite for this is really dipping in and doing the soul work, which I've learned through my hypnosis practice, through my prayer and meditation, through my prayer practices, through my meditation, which is listening for me. Meditation is, a lot of my meditation practice is actually contemplative prayer and listening and being in the presence of and seeing what has really come through and what has been revealed as a result of just getting still and getting present with the divine presence, with God's presence. And this stuff isn't something that just happened overnight. You know, there's a relationship that has to be built and trust that has to be built with yourself, with this power. And until those things are really addressed, it's kind of hard to move forward, because you can't pretend to trust somebody if you don't. Like, you have to be willing to be really honest about this. And I also find that this is really important, powerful work, because a lot of people want to believe with this in their relationship. And, some people don't believe and they have a lot of agnosticism. And then there's like covert agnostics where like they think they believe, they say they believe, but if they really look at the areas of their life, there's a lot of areas where they are like, you can't come in. I've got this handled. But then again, do they, And that also goes along with people that, say they believe, but they're not having an experience to really reinforce that belief. So when push comes to shove and their nervous system becomes flooded, they go into, their belief isn't strong enough to actually sustain them, to be able to like really anchor them, for them to hold on to weather what feels like that storm, that they have to pass through in order to see the truth clearly, and in order to heal whatever's coming up. I think that relationship is the most important, and doing what we need to do in order to be able to access that solution is the most important work in healing in my own journey. It's the thing that's enabled me to overcome and transmute stuff that like I would not be willing to sit through if I did not know that I was held, because it can just feel too volatile, because some of the stuff that we're dealing with and these energies that come up to be released are really volatile. So, that's really my work that I can stand on, and the fact in my life today that has enabled me to have my problems, like Bambi over here with her Marlboros, that has actually given me leverage and given me height, because I stand on top of those things now. Those things don't stand on top of me, I have victory over them. It's like my little mountain I can stand on. It's the vantage point that I have now as a result of overcoming that stuff. So that's that. And I look forward to our chat in a couple of weeks from now. Mwah. Thank you for tuning in to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. For more information, resources, and exclusive content, visit our website at maybemindful.com, or go ahead and follow us over on Instagram at maybemindful. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please give me a follow, screenshot the episode, and go ahead and tag me until next week when I bring you another thought-provoking and inspiring topic. Until then,